It's the 14th, and we're going to do government and security. And I'm filling in for Krista because she's up to things.
Did we learn what?
I don't know if we did.
Well, there's nothing we can do about that. And there's probably nothing we can do about this. As we have learned so recently, the government has learned that spying, that takes resources. You have to spend a lot of money on that. You can spend comparatively less money, amazingly, just buying the data because all the corporations are already spying on us. Hey.
ICE, that's Immigrations and Customs, searched LexisNexis over 1 million times in just 7 months. But you don't understand. LexisNexis started life as a legal database, but LexisNexis has purchased millions of records, hundreds of millions of records from commercial databases. So things like your bill payment history are in LexisNexis, and they can prepare a report for that. So this is a fairly detailed article that talks about the number of requests, and there were also a couple 100,000 detailed reports. One individual did 26,000 searches in a month, which is, how do you do that? That's like 1,000 searches a day.
And because it is a service, there's no oversight there. You don't need any reason to search somebody on LexisNexis. You just do whatever you want.
You don't need a warrant. You can just be like, hey, let's cause trouble for this guy that does my yard.
And apparently LexisNexis is so good that in those searches, it can pick up the people around you as well, like your neighbors even.
Yeah. Because the database has your geolocation stuff if that leaked. And it's like, hey, this person is near you a lot. They must live nearby.
And probably one of the big reasons for them to go to the buy it instead of spy on it mentality is because of the bureaucracy. It actually is very hard to violate someone's Fourth Amendment's rights. That's kind of how it was designed, right?
Well,
the bureaucracy sometimes protects us, although not often, as we've just seen, but other ways it just slows us down.
The Pentagon's new AI and data chief says, let me just say honestly that the bureaucracy is real.
Although, I mean, if this is like facial recognition and that kind of stuff, it might be good, right?
You dig into this article, and it's not really that the bureaucracy is real. It's that if the government wants to have this, it's going to come from Raytheon or General Electric or one of the incumbents. It's really hard for the bureaucracy to accept new contractors. I mean, Clearview's working real hard to get in there, and the bureaucracy is real there, but there's not really as much of a bureaucracy on the Fourth Amendment side as there is just on the procedural procurement side.
So it got pointed out that he's been in the job for ever how long. He still doesn't have a security card. He still goes through the visitor entrance when he comes to work, because that's just obviously how that works. Just who's going to get that done? I don't know. And you might think that it's such a dysfunctional group probably shouldn't be in charge of even more things, but not only are they getting more and more in charge of things, they want to reach outside the borders as usual.
The U.S. Department of Justice calls for more international cooperation and enforcement on crypto law enforcement. So it's anti-money laundering. It's tracking, Germany, the United Kingdom, several other EU states are interested in this kind of thing. So of course they're going to cooperate and leave it to the Department of Justice to say, here is the framework that we are going to use for cooperation. This is what you need to be doing. Okay.
And in fact, they are looking very closely at the cryptocurrency world. They might feel that it's a bit of a threat to them, and they really don't like it when people do things outside of their view.
The SEC is investigating Binance's BNB token, according to this report. So, this is a security token, but not really. We covered this, when the first time we covered this, didn't we basically refer to this as a glorified timeshare?
Yeah. They did some weird things with it that weren't pure crypto. And so the SEC is saying, hey, this looks like a security to us. Looks like you're selling stocks.
The SEC's been doing that a lot lately. You think maybe that's to draw attention away from other things they've got going on? Because they didn't care for a few years.
Well, they care when the wrong people do it. Again, when it's outside of their control, they care. When it's done there on their market system, totally cool. And solar panels, boy, with the big heat wave that's coming up and, the grid issues, seems like a good idea to blanket as much of the earth as we can in solar panels, because that's basically the only energy that's still legal, right?
Yeah.
So there's a problem with that because of China.
Biden orders emergency steps to boost U.S. solar production. It turns out we don't make a lot of the ingredients that go into solar panels here because it's really pretty bad for the environment. It's made in China.
What? You can't say that. This is clean energy. So they're talking about removing the tariff, but the reason we have the tariff in the first place is because a lot of people were afraid that China would dump a bunch of garbage solar panels into the United States to get rid of them.
Which kind of was happening.
So now we're going to go back to that, I guess.
Yeah. Seems like this would be a good entrepreneurial opportunity, but then you don't have any opportunity to actually generate that industry in America because a lot of the underpinning that you would need to produce solar panels isn't there because of other regulations.
Yeah, you would be buried in regulatory red tape and that to pay those workers and to find those workers. How are you going to do that?
Can we just annex Mexico and make that the no environment zone and just do all the production down there?
I don't think that's. I don't think that would go over very well.
Was that out loud? Sorry. I get that feeling reading some of this sometimes. It's like these politicians are like, we could just do this in another country. Why don't we, oh, right.
Let's do it to Canada.
No, Canada's too pretty.
Yeah, it'll take us forever to destroy that.
That was one of the funny things in the Pentaveret Mike Myers movies. Like when they got out of Canada, they changed all the filters on the cameras, and then the characters commented on that. They were like, that's weird. Because, Mexico is always brown in movies.
And another industry that seems to be pretty good at avoiding the regulatory loopholes or carving new ones whenever they need to might be losing some of their luster because maybe finally...
Senate antitrust vote likely to pass legislation targeting Apple and other tech giants. Man, I was reading this and the only thing I could think about was the other story in business where Apple is going to get into personal finance and a whole bunch of other things. And oh boy, that does look pretty insane.
Yeah. Yeah, Apple in charge of the money. Of course, that's been coming for a long time. Apple was smart enough to ease it in, whereas Zuckerberg just tried to go in all at once and got smacked down.
That's not how that works.
He was a noob. He didn't know how it works. He didn't understand lobbying yet.
A lot of the senators and stuff, though, are saying that tech controls too much of our stuff and blah, blah, blah. And, everything is on fire and it's all technology's fault. And I found a lot of their arguments disingenuous, but it probably does need attention.
But there is an addiction here, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, fighting addiction in that way doesn't work, as we have so much. The drug war has taught us that. But is antitrust? I don't know. Maybe if antitrust knocks them down and lets a bunch of smaller companies pop up, maybe that's good. The competition.
I don't know. There's so much other stuff that's it's like we're already 3/4 of the way in regulatory capture, and now we're speaking about antitrust. It's like we should have been doing not regulatory capture for the last 10 years if now we're going to talk about antitrust. It really just seems like a cudgel used to try to get what politicians want out of tech companies.
And there's an election coming. Looks really good before the election. Well, I can't imagine what the Supreme Court is thinking here because when I'm thinking about whose opinion I would ask on technology, I'm imagining that list. Could you think of very many people you'd put below this man?
No. I mean, at first it's like, well, is this an opinion on technology? And then you dig into it and it's like, well, it's not really what they're asking for.
But there's zero chance that he understands encryption.
There's zero chance that he understands the nuance here. The Reuters reports the U.S. Supreme Court seeks Biden views on WhatsApp Pegasus spyware dispute. So the WhatsApp part of the headline here is a little bit of a red herring. I'm not sure that the Reuters people even understood what they were writing about, but to recap,
there's a lot of that.
Yeah,
more and more.
To recap, I mean, what would you do the 60-second summary in the Pegasus stuff that we've covered? Pegasus mainly targets Apple devices, but there is an Android version.
Well, Pegasus claims that it's only used for bad people. But we have seen overwhelming evidence that even if they only sell it in that way, it's not contained.
Yeah. So
it gets to activists, reporters, exactly who you would expect to protect from this kind of thing.
Historically, it has been borderline undetectable malware on an iPhone that will survive resets and reinstalls. And Apple, in my opinion, is not doing enough to really deal with it. But in this case, U.S. citizens were targeted by foreign governments. So the question before the Supreme Court is, does that make the NSO group, the people that are responsible for Pegasus, liable? Like, that's the opinion they want from the Biden administration, because it's like, well, technically that's outside of U.S. jurisdiction, but the phones that are infected are on U.S. soil, possessed by U.S. citizens. How do we address that in law?
I guarantee you, I don't know this for a fact, but I'd be willing to bet any sum of money on it. I would bet that U.S. foreign aid went into NSO R&D.
Absolutely, 100%. I would totally agree with that. That is very, very likely.
But you just cannot talk about that.
It's another USS Liberty incident.
Which is the anniversary. This last week was the anniversary. Happy anniversary, all you
Yes.
dead sailors. You should Google that.
And we're not going to talk about that because that's a thing.
And I must admit that this was already going on, but now the expansion, the timing is a little suspicious.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, public enemy number one these days is Elon Musk.
Federal Safety Agency expands its investigation of Tesla's autopilot system. This definitely has nothing to do with Elon Musk declaring war on politicians.
Now, this was all about the biggest part of this is that those Teslas just could not stop ramming into emergency vehicles because, and we talked about this before when these things happen, but police and ambulance and stuff are trained to park a little bit in the road to block that right lane when there's something broken down or there's an accident or something on the shoulder or maybe partially in the lane
And
itself.
an angle so that you'll glance off of them away from them.
So, because they want you to get out of that lane and not risk debris or hitting somebody who's over there or anything like that. Teslas just they can't seem to understand this concept.
They don't comprehend.
They plow right into them.
Yeah.
So that's what they're looking into.
Although people are supposed to be driving, but then they use terms like it's autopilot. And it's like,
Or full self-driving.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the argument. China, have you been following the Belt and Road?
yeah.
China has a secret military base, maybe several, all across the path down through the South China Sea and out that strait.
Yeah.
They're controlling that whole, like they're building a ring fence around Taiwan. And
Has anybody noticed that?
they're doing it by giving these countries really crazy loans and that they know they can't pay back. And then they're like, oh, you can't pay your loan? Guess we'll take that port. Just give us that port. It's not going to be a military base. And then they won't let the regulators in anymore.
Yeah.
So they got a big plan going on with this Belt and Road thing. And that's not the only thing they're doing. They're also looking at the internet.
China has rebranded its proposal on internet governance targeting developing countries. So this is actually really genius. What do you do when let's call it the West, but it's really Europe and the West now at this point. What do you do when your telecom companies were producing telecom equipment that's video surveillance equipment, internet routing equipment, that kind of thing? You're basically caught with your hand in the till producing dangerously insecure equipment that can't be explained by simple incompetence. It's just there's so many security holes that it almost seems deliberate. And like you found some security holes. Those are the ones that were there for you to find. But what if there were some really skilled security holes there as well? So that suppresses the market for other legitimate competition, blah, blah, blah. You play the long game. What do you do if you do that on a whole internet protocol level? That's IPv6 plus, which sounds like it would be compatible with IPv6, but it's not. This is a whole other rabbit hole of insanity that may actually warrant a separate video because IPv6 plus is not a great idea.
Unless you're China.
Yeah, or unless you want Huawei equipment to service IPv6 plus.
But if you are a low income country and you're looking to expand your internet and China's throwing bags of money at you, maybe it does look pretty good. Although there is a little bit of hope here that a lot of the leaders who were, had quotes in this article were very suspicious, as they should be.
This seems like it's too good of a deal to be true. Well,
because China's going to have a 99-year lease on your infrastructure, your internet infrastructure. The Great Wall will expand. And Taiwan is the big thing at stake here, right? Just like Ukraine is the prize in the north,
for food production.
Taiwan is the prize in that ocean. And that's because they're now the powerhouse of technology. So China is looking at Russia and they're like, ooh, look at those sanctions. That would be bad for us. So you have to plan in advance. What would we do if the U.S. sanctioned us in a similar way?
Then China must seize TSMC if the U.S. were to impose sanctions. That's the headline going around. When you unpack it, the Economist also said, but it would be really hard to get it without destroying it.
And we have introduced kind of like the Samson plan to Taiwan. We're like, hey, if you want to be a partner of us, we kind of need you to agree to burn all this down should the CCP show up on your shores.
It's really interesting because if China does this, it almost has to be a hearts and minds thing. Like the people have to want it. The people might be mistaken for wanting it, but the people would have to want it in order for China to succeed. There is not a military solution here for either side.
I imagine you could probably get people in place,
Over time.
take it over,
Yeah, like Hong Kong.
protect it. No, well, yeah, but like Taiwan's going to be a little bit harder. But you need people on the inside who seize those factories and then defend them until the main force can get there.
That really did not work out well for Chernobyl or the other nuclear plant.
Well, maybe we could assume that China's more efficient than Russia. Plus, they got all those new military bases, secret military bases, right?
That are along the Belt and Road. Yeah.
Quick response. They got the South China Sea Islands, which were not militarized in any way.
Those are getting bigger.
Yeah, they got that amazing, like they just dredge down and spray the sand up.
It turns out the thing that they needed was air garbage. They just needed piles and piles of American garbage, and they could build the.
Sure, that's good for the sea life. But you talk about hearts and minds, and one way, if you are a despotic government, you're never going to get their hearts, right? But you might get their greed.
China offends. China offers citizens cash and spiritual rewards, quote unquote, for spying tip-offs. The state security ministry, man, if that takes off like it does here, you're going to have an army of Karens that are reporting people for things like jaywalking, and they'll be overwhelmed with nonsense.
Yes, because people cannot wait to get on the phone with those cops. That's an astonishing personality trait. I can't get my head around it. But it's 12,000 RMB, which was how much?
Not a lot.
But I mean, in China, with a lot of people have very low income. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was 100,000 yuan. I don't know how to pronounce that. I think that's $12,000. People would definitely screw you for 12. People make up stuff for $12,000.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's like, I don't like him. Let's plant some evidence in his car. It's like,
And the EU has made a very, very bold decision.
The some EU lawmakers have endorsed a ban on combustion engine cars by 2035. It's going to be really bad when we discover that special brand of cyanobacteria that produces diesel-like fuel, and it's like, hey, it's green internal combustion. Too late. Oh,
Yeah, in fact, this agreement expressly forbids any sort of liquid chemical fuel.
yeah.
So it's impossible to make that amazing fuel.
I really wish that they would get that in there, because if we had algae that produced diesel, that would be incredible, because internal combustion engines are nice.
They are so convenient. But they're evil.
I wonder if we could turn it into electricity somehow, have some kind of liquid. I mean, if you take apart like lithium AA batteries, the stuff in there is liquid. Like the long life lithium AA's.
I don't think you can put it in your engine.
No, not in that form.
And the EU is working on another Russian ban. Wow, this seems a little bit late, right? But I guess better late than never.
The EU is working on a possible ban on providing cloud services to Russia, according to source. This is Reuters. So you have to know where your customer is. They can't just show up with a credit card and a bank account. It's like, are you using this in Russia? No? Yes? Okay.
It's important to note that the EU doesn't, I mean, they've got some presence there, but they don't really have a lot of cloud hosting companies. So basically they're saying, hey, you American companies need to stop doing this.
Well, I mean, Microsoft is pulling out.
Google already did, right?
Yeah. That's going to be the business section.
They'll have to use Rumble. And the old EU charger thing, we talked about this last week, but now I think it is official, right?
It is, yeah. The EU has agreed to make a common charger mandatory for Apple iPhones and other devices. Basically everything. USB-C.
Which it is terrible what Apple did. But at the same time, this also is that same, like the liquid fuel thing. You can't make anything better.
This is also a paywall alternative. And in the story that you had in the story list, they had the USB-C cable and the Apple Lightning cable together. And the picture of the Apple Lightning cable had the one pin that's burnt. Everybody's got the Lightning cable that has the one pin that's just black, because Apple engineers, the idealists that they are. Oh, yeah, there you go. The UK is not going to follow. Yeah. UK will not copy EU demand for common charging cable. I thought this was... Anyway, look at that. Look at the burned pin. Look at it. It's so burned. Everybody has this cable. Look, this is all you need to know about Apple engineering in a nutshell. They did the math, and that was as big as it needed to be for the charging rate that they wanted. But they didn't take into account pocket lint and aging, because they never do, because it's Apple. They don't do any real world practical engineering. It's only ideals. And it's your fault that the cable's dirty.
I think the UK here is just, they love to be different than the EU now. Like, no, we're not doing that. Although, the innovation thing, I think, like, what if we come up with a better cable than USB-C? And then you're going to have to move at the speed of EU bureaucracy to update your phone.
I would be okay with an exception for like magnetic cables, where it's just a pogo pins and the cable just snaps in place. That'd be fine. And there's already an exception for wireless charging. So if your thing can charge wirelessly, meh.
Well, Saudi Arabia, some very interesting stuff going on there. It turns out, much like Japan, they have a big problem with replacement rate breeding and an aging population. What do you do if you're in that situation, but you have nearly unlimited budget?
Saudi Arabia plans to spend $1 billion a year discovering treatments to slow aging. We've got some other stories that say that they should probably just fund these other people that have already figured that out.
They're looking at metformin, which is a diabetes drug that I think they've had some very impressive stuff in mice with that. But if you do this and you're successful, sounds great, right? But you go from a nice, pleasant society where everybody is getting old and dying to resource wars almost immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't carry that many people. It just ain't going to happen, at least not that quickly.
Now, Elon Musk says the carrying capacity for Earth is nowhere near the ceiling.
Elon Musk also praises the Chinese Communist Party for their thoughts on work and 996. Elon Musk wants slaves. The saga of Google and RCS in India has a new chapter. They rolled it out. They were so excited about it. And Indian businesses who cared nothing about the rules immediately took advantage of it. So much so,
Google has disabled RCS ads in India following rampant spam by businesses. We reported on this last week. It was like, guess you can't turn it off. And the Google's like, okay, we'll turn it off on our side.
How quickly something gets ruined by advertising.
This was almost a nothing burger.
Yeah, but we got to see another terrible splash page, and I thought that Krista could comment on it, but of course she's abandoned us.
FBI seizes a notorious marketplace for selling millions of stolen SSNs. It was SSN DOB market. But the other 800 places you can download that zip file still exist.
A lot of places you get it for free.
A carefully worded Google search will get it to you for free.
Of course, we all hate notifications on our websites. And it's funny because TechCrunch has a little one at the bottom on this page. Oh, et2, TechCrunch.
Chrome will now silence many of those annoying notification permission prompts on the web. So the only one I've ever allowed is from Discourse, like on the forums that I hang out, because Discourse has that. But like all these news sites where it's like, oh, TechCrunch would like to send you updates. No.
Or know your location.
Yeah, I have enough problem with the Epic Games Launcher. It's like, I'm going to turn that off. And then I install Epic Games Launcher on another computer. And then the computer that I turn that off on, it turns it back on. And so it's just like, and so then I come in and there's a stack of like 7 Epic Games Launcher things on like a computer I use for benchmarking. And it's like, thanks, Epic Games Launcher. And that's not even the thing we're talking about. It's just everybody wants to pop up with nonsense.
Yeah. And it's going to use machine learning. And it says the machine learning is going to try to figure out whether or not you like those things.
It'll just block everything.
What person ever loves those?
Yeah, no one.
How desperate do you have to be for interaction?
The click-through rate on those is slightly higher than the email pop-up. That's like, well, you want to sign up for our newsletter? That pops up after you've been reading the article for 30 seconds.
Which, if you can apply machine learning to that, that's what you need to get rid of. And Google has another tool similar to their map tool. However, this one is not all about showing you, directions or anything like that. We are observing what is on the surface of the planet on any given tiny pixel.
Google tool shows what's on the surface of the Earth in real time. So this is movement. They're basically, the satellites aren't numerous enough and fast enough now. We can just point them at Earth and take pictures and see what changes in a given day. So that's New York.
That's going to be red indicates built land, like a structure, whereas the pockets of green are the parks and such. Do you think this would actually be fast enough in real time to represent what happened in a nuclear strike?
Yes. Probably also, it's fast enough to watch what's happening in Ukraine because there's map updates with that kind of stuff, and it's fascinating. And like the aircraft transponders and the vehicle transponders and all of that's just on the internet.
Well, one of the, if you're a traveler, or even if you're not, I guess, one of the scariest kinds of malware and infection is the kind that comes through your charging cable, because you don't know what to think about it. You might be in a mall or a bus station or something like that, and you're like, oh, a charging station. You plug it in, bad move, bad idea. And now that Apple, I guess, is forced to use USB-C, they're going to do something about it.
macOS will soon block unknown USB accessories by default. So we've got more stories about this kind of thing coming up in business, but there was an Apple event last week, and there's a lot of stuff, but the new version of macOS is going to block untrusted USB-C devices by default. When you plug in USB-C something, it's going to pop up and ask you, it's like, hey, should we trust this thing?
Well, I hate the shortenings, but fintech. Oh, fintech is hot right now. Everybody wants to be a part of it. And if you're one of those people, but you don't really know much about it, you might even not know what that word means. But you're like, man, I got to be a part of this. Here's a little pro tip. That API key, protect it. Protect it with your life. Because if somebody else has it, it's the same as being you.
Investor sues the Winklevoss twins' troubled crypto business over security failures. IRA Financial Trust blames Gemini for the theft of $36 million in crypto. What happened? They lost their API key.
And once that was gone, so was all their crypto.
The Winklevoss twins you may remember from such adventures as the founding of Facebook.
And getting insanely rich on the rise of Bitcoin.
It's not doing as well now, but it's still insanely doing well compared to when they got in at around $100 a coin.
Some of that might be lost to this lawsuit. Although I don't know. That guy doesn't have much of a case, right? I mean, API key, if you lose your API key, that's on you.
Yeah.
That's like taking your car keys and just throwing them out in the street.
Or taking a picture of them, putting them on YouTube. Just like, here's my car.
And another week. So, of course, what do we have? That's right. Another almost said another city shut down by a cyber attack.
Italian city of Palermo shuts down all systems to fend off cyber attack. So they were doing recon. They were starting to infect systems. And it's like, okay, the way that we can deal with this is just turn everything off until we can clean it up. So they did. And that seems to have worked.
Some lovely old buildings in this city.
It's the 5th largest city in Italy.
Yikes.
They get about 2.3 million visitors a year, I think, something like that.
We see these headlines over and over. Every company has, well, not every company, but a lot of companies have made this announcement before. I think Microsoft was the last one. None of it's really caught on, but Apple could have the clout to make this ubiquitous.
Apple passkeys could finally kill off the password for good. Basically, you use your phone and a QR code to log into a website. Just what the NSO group wants.
Yeah. Everything is on the phone, so presumably there's another factor there that
the
proves it's
ultimate
you.
trust. I would trust Apple and that phone. It's very secure.
The idea is we get away from data leaks because your data is not necessarily, or nothing useful is actually on the website. The website just knows to communicate back with your phone and authenticate that way. But then the phone becomes the weak link. And you can lose those.
Or someone can pwn it from halfway around the globe.
Or SIM swap it.
Yeah.
Or supply chain attack it because you installed Cookie Clicker. I don't actually know that Cookie Clickers anything's wrong with it. It might be fine. Here's a headline. It's like, yeah, did Captain Obvious write this one? Raphael Satter. Is this shocking?
Ukrainian officials' phones targeted by hackers, according to a cyber watchdog. Yeah, that Pegasus software, about 5 different people have been trying to Pegasus Ukrainian officials' phones.
Wonder who could be responsible. Actually, it's probably as much the United States as it is Russia. Here's the thing. Because there is a story that Ukraine is not providing enough feedback back to Washington, and Washington doesn't like it. Call back to the USS Liberty incident. You know why the USS Liberty was there? It was to spy. They didn't like that. Telegram is one of those services where you might use it instead of all the other horribly insecure things, and you might think you're safe, but you shouldn't think that.
Telegram reportedly surrendered user data to authorities despite insisting 0 bytes had ever been shared. It was a number substantially greater than 0. And we reported this on the Level 1 news first, because remember when this came out, we're like, no, they definitely shared info.
Germany, well, we presumed this first, maybe. But Germany, this had to do with like child predator type stuff and terror cases. Apparently, when those two things came up, Telegram was like, yep, here you go. Look at whatever you want. Signal might still be okay.
Maybe.
And Microsoft has another big flaw, and this one they are not rushing to deal with.
An actively exploited Microsoft zero-day flaw still has no patch. This is the one we reported on from last week. Still dangerous. There are mitigating things you should do. You should definitely read the article to do that, especially if you work in small business, small office type situations. But yeah, it's not a great situation.
Often, security researchers come up with novel things that are used to spy that may never actually make it into the real spying world. There was the light bulb spying thing. You think anybody's actually used that at this point?
Probably it's been used in like 5 operations worldwide.
It doesn't work super great. You need a really, really perfect situation. In this case, even temperature can mess with it.
Yeah.
But it is terrifying.
Bluetooth signals can be used to identify and track smartphones. This is substantially more low-tech. In fact, a lot of retailers in malls, back before malls were declining sharply, precipitously, had kiosks in them that were tracking the Bluetooth signals. And when you went to checkout, it would try to correlate a Bluetooth MAC address, which is globally unique, with your purchase identity. This is so bad. The Wi-Fi MAC address and the Bluetooth MAC address. This is so bad for, I think, the last 3 or 4 versions of macOS. It tries to randomize the MAC address, the media access control address, in the iOS software to try to thwart this type of spying because it is so pervasive.
But in this case, the MAC address is not even required. There is noise on the Bluetooth chip that is actually unique to the chip. But that is the thing that changes with temperature.
Yep.
So maybe when you start like you come into the mall at first, you put your phone in your pocket and warm it up. But then halfway through your mall trip, you get a cold drink, hold that against the phone. Change your Bluetooth signature. Just don't go to malls.
It's bad.
And here's a terrifying headline because in the UK, the National Health Service is getting into the school systems somehow. And they're like, hey, we need to do something. We need to do things for the kids. What can we do? What can we introduce to the school system to make it safer and better for the kids? And someone unironically said Palantir. Yeah, Palantir.
Palantir gears up to expand its reach into the UK's National Health Service because Palantir definitely needs access to all of the health records of people in the National Health Service in the UK. That definitely makes sense.
You know, the company that's named after a terrible spying tool? I can say that this week because Chris is not here.
Do you think that they would use the biometric data from this to uncover spies?
Or to build onto their other stuff with all the data they rake in from these kids that's illegal?
It's madness.
But it's coming.
All right, what do we got for tomorrow? Business? There's a lot of business stories this week.
Yeah, business and then whatever is not big, which would be social.
June 1 was the quarter rollover, so there's all kinds of business news. All right, we'll see you then.
We don't have anybody say bye in the sing-song voice. Imagine it.
I'll have a drink of cheap coffee. Mm-hmm.